Hello and welcome all back to Election Time News America. Today is Thursday, June 25th, 2025, and today we're going to be going over just over my PVI and overall sheet calculator here that I've been working on for a while, mostly looking at the current PVIs in a lot of these states, as well as the implications, not only for 2028 and beyond, which again, I'm still working on all of these sheets at this point in time, but also the potential midterms as well as the gubernatorial contests that are coming up later this year, where we have the in progress Virginia and New Jersey sheets and the midterm gubernatorial contests. Election Time News, your one stop for all things elections and politics, from summations to poll reviews and news. Subscribe for more content like this about American, Canadian, and Australian elections. I will be getting to the Tasmanian election soon. I'm just going to be waiting, since it's a small level thing, I'm going to be waiting a bit longer before the before I start getting into it. There's not that much polling done yet, so I want to wait a bit longer. There hasn't actually been really any polling at any time recently, so I'm waiting a bit longer before I'm actually going to get into that. So I haven't been polling in over a month. And yeah, okay, that's going the right way. All right, so yeah, there's no actual information there as of right now. So moving on, starting on here, we're going to also be making a map on YapMS as well as on Jackson Jude, because this you can also show the shift. You can easily shift it one direction or the other, which I think is really convenient because that really shows what PVI is, and that is literally it's short for Partisan Voting Index. There's one made by the Cook Political Report, which is generally the one that's used by a lot of people, but I decided to make one myself as it has accuracy within a tenth, plus it has unique weighting as well as including for demographics and the current trend. So it includes the past few cycles based on the weighting I have going back to 2008, because that one is worth just over 10%, but nothing past that because it would be worth less than 10%. That's a minimal effect on the result. And then also, why is that not styled? And then also there is we have the trend line. We also have the demographics, which is going to be based off of these main three demographics: the median age, as older voters tend to vote more Republican than younger voters, except this is changing, so this is going to have to get weighted differently. Percent college degree, this is the strongest correlation. People who are more college educated tend to vote more Democratic. And percent white, as whiter voters tend to vote more Republican than non-white voters, which is another changing demographic shift that we've seen. But as of right now, it is still somewhat useful. So over here, we can see this is of course, the 2024 presidential map. We've seen this a lot, just because it's the most recent presidential election. But all of the PVIs are the exact same party that won the state in 2024. And that's not that surprising, since Trump did win all the swing states. Since generally Democrats win the popular vote, they do end up typically winning. Even in 2020, all of these swing states, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, and Nevada, all had Republican PVIs. So that's just because typically Democrats win the national popular vote by a bit. So it's an estimation of how much they have to win the national popular vote by. So in order to show this in a bit of a... Okay, it's being a bit funky. In order to show this, it's not working like it's supposed to. There we go. In order to show this in a bit of a simple way, you can shift it to the left by 1.5 points. So this would be for an even national popular vote environment. This means that both of them would get 49.1% of the popular vote, and so you would end up with these wouldn't be flips. Kamala Harris would have won Michigan and Wisconsin, but Trump would have won all of the other swing states. So he still would have won 49.06% of the popular vote each. So this would be essentially their end PVI for 2024. Pennsylvania R plus 1/4. Michigan basically completely dead even. Wisconsin about D plus 1/2. So this is what PVI is assuming that there's an even popular environment. So then what you can do from that is, let's say, okay, Harris wins the popular environment by 3. What would it look like? All you need to do is take these PVIs, shift it to the left by 3, and there you go. Here's your map. What if Trump had won by 2? There's your map. So it's simply just easy to adjust, so that's why I'm going to be using it on this simple map, just because you can easily shift it. So, with that in mind, starting off with the first state, we're going to just go in alphabetical order. I can't really sort it because I have the weights over here, and they're specifically correlated to things. I need to figure out how to fix that. I could probably move it to a different sheet, but I don't want it. I could probably pop it over here. But anyway, as of right now, that's not really going to work. So, to start things off, we do have the state of Alabama. Why did I not style this evenly? Oh well. So 29.38 is going to be the raw number, but I'm going to be looking right here just to make things simple. The PVI of 29.5. So that is by far safe Republican. That's not anything reachable for a Democrat by any means. 29.5 is a strong margin. It has gone, the weighted result is R plus 28 and 29.14 to the right of the nation as a whole, which is going to be more heavily weighted in 2024 than any of these other ones, obviously, as it was the most recent. So it ends up being worth the most. So that's what that weighting means. So then moving over to the next state, Alaska. This is a left trending state. 3.12 to the left. You can see here that it voted 28 points to the right of the nation in 2008, all the way to 17 in 2012. It does help that John McCain's running mate was from Alaska. So that helps. It actually almost voted as far to the right as Alabama did, but then it jumped very far to the left, continued moving to the left, and has moved left ever since. So, you can see that it voted just over 10 points for Trump in 2020, and then 13.13, which is a move to the right, but in respect to the nation, it actually moved to the left by almost 3. And its weighted national vote is 14 points to the right of the country. So its final PVI is going to be R plus 11. This is just barely going to be safe. On multiple other models, that would be that would in fact not be safe, but I do a model where we have plus 10 or more is going to be safe. We're going to be looking at the margins here. So 10 plus points is safe, 5 to 10 is going to be likely, 2 to 5 is lean, and less than 2 is tilt. So moving on there, we have Arizona. Now this one was a rough blow for the Democrats this cycle. 3.5 is going to be the final PVI almost entirely because of this shift. It actually still moved 0.1% to the left in respect to the nation, which is a very, very narrow trend to the left, but that's how far the national popular environment moved to the right. But it went from 15.7 for voting for John McCain in his home state to 12.92, 5.63, 4.16, 4.05. So now it's down to R plus 3.5, almost even for the demographics, along with Alaska. 2.03 to the left trend. That's one of the lower ones. And so R plus 3.5 means it's going to be lean on the map here. R plus 3.5. So next is going to be the state of Arkansas, 29.5. So this one actually has been barely moving to the left. That's honestly negligible. That's mostly going to be because most of the states in the country comparatively did move to the left of the nation just because of how far to the right big states like California moved to the right, and they're a majority of the population. California, right here by itself, moved to the right in respect to the nation, but that entirely drew the entire nation to the right because of how many people live in California. So eventually, I might figure out a way to work in the state dependability index, which is going to be a number based on how many people live in which state. And if that state moves to the right, it's going to weight the country by more than other states would. So it's going to incorporate the fact that California moving to the right by 5 is going to do more compared to the country than Idaho moving to the right by 5. So anyway, it did in theory move a little bit to the left, but it moved to the right each and every other time. So 27, 27, 29, 32. So it generally is a right trending state, honestly, in general, but it is very strong demographics for the very strong demographics for the Republicans here, 29 and a half. So after voting for Clinton, it's now down to 20 up to 29 and a half. So that's a pretty big trend of obviously I mean even as recently again as 1996, 17 points for Bill Clinton, 5.5 for Bush in 2000, 10 in 2004, 20 for McCain, 24 for Romney, 27 for Trump, 27 and a half for Trump. It actually moved to the right. It was one of the few states that moved to the right from 2016 to 2020. California did by a point, Nevada did by a negligible amount, Arkansas by 7/10, Illinois by 0.08, DC by a few hundred votes, and Florida by 2.2, and Utah did as well, but that was because a bit more of McMullen's vote share went to Trump than Biden, and then Hawaii. So that is one of the few. Arkansas is one of the few states that actually moved to the right there, and then it went from 27.6 to 30.6. So it absolutely is continuing to move towards the right. So that is going to be a strong Republican state right there. California, 22 and a half, right trending state. As I said, it moved pretty far to the right. And that's after it also moved to the right. Its peak for the Democrats was 2016, 28 points to the left of the nation. But then it voted further to the right in 2020 and even further to the right in 2024. So, but it is not necessarily by any means in danger for the Democrats. 22 points, 22 and a half for being that final PVI there. So there's not really any concern for the state of California. Interesting thing for Colorado, it is the most Democratic trending state in the entire country. Yes, Utah's is higher, but that's because it went from Mitt Romney being that's almost entirely weighted from Mitt Romney being a Mormon from Utah in 2012 to McMullen splitting the vote in 2016. So that shift is going to be 30 points, which is going to very heavily weigh it. So that's kind of skewed. Colorado is the most left trending state in the entire country. Not by much. Right behind, you have Georgia, you have Alaska, you have Kansas, and you do actually have Utah somewhat left trending. You have Washington. So, and then Nebraska's second district is actually the most left trending thing in the entire country, but it's not a state, obviously. But it is pretty left trending. Recently, it voted 12.5 points to the left of the nation by over double digits to the left of the nation as a whole. After it went from 1 1/3 to 1.5 to 2.8, and then it just went to 9 to the left, and then to 12.5. So now we end up with a D plus 13 PVI, very strong setup in Colorado for the Democrats in future elections. That's going to be a strong state for the Senate right here. PVI of 13, so that's going to be a good sign for the Democrats there. Connecticut, D plus 16, exact same thing in Delaware. They have relatively similar voting histories, interestingly enough. But they're actually kind of just converging. Delaware only voted for Clinton by 11, but then both of them voted for Obama by 20, 20 to 25 points, and then 17 to 18, very, very close, 11 to 13, 2018, and then 14 and a half each. So they're both pretty close. Their trends kind of align nicely. Delaware's a bit favorable for Republicans based on demographics. Connecticut a bit towards Democrats, but they do end up, they're just barely on opposite sides of negative 16, but they do both end up being D plus 16. So they're both going to end up being, just due to rounding, because you can't be so sure, you're not going to pretend that we are sure, so we only have 1 degree of certainty, and that is by each half. So we do end up having D plus 16 for both there on the map. So next to me, the state of Florida. This is basically the most right trending state in the entire country. The only one that's more right trending is actually Hawaii. But of course it hasn't been enough to move anywhere. And third is New York. But it voted 11 and a half points to the right of the country in 2024, which is insane from voting just 3 points to the right of the country in 2012. In 12 years, it moved 9 points to the right. So 2.88 for that trend number. The demographics, that's going to be an older population there, 4.5 years older than the median age of the nation, slightly less educated, interestingly more diverse, but that's also dropping as well, especially the Cuban Hispanic population that is in Florida. Miami-Dade flipped, for example. It's a great sign of that. So Florida is now R plus 12 on this map. That is now a safe red state. That was once a strong swing state that was contested election after election. It was by typically narrow margins. I mean, going back here, you had 1960, 64, it flipped. 68, it flipped. 72, 76, it flipped. 80, it flipped. 84 stayed. 88 stayed. 92, Clinton narrowly lost it. This was the first time that it voted for the loser, but then voted for him by 5.8 in 1996. Bush narrowly won it in 2000. There's disputes on that. 2004, 5 points for Bush, just under. As you can see, this is likely, or just over likely rating. 2008, Obama flipped it by 3. Narrowly held on to it by 0.9% in 2012. Trump flipped it by 1.2 in 2016. Won it by 3.4 in 2020. 13 in 2024. That is the largest margin for any candidate since 1988. And you can also see here, he won Miami-Dade, he won Hillsborough, Pinellas, all of these generally minority-dense counties. He only lost Palm Beach by 0.76 after Biden won it by 13, and Clinton won it by 15. Miami-Dade, Clinton won it by 30 percentage points 8 years prior, and then he won it by 11.5. So that is a huge trend towards the right. Every single county in Florida moved towards the right from 2020 to 2024. Every single one of them. So it is completely a right trending state, and it is now completely safe on this map. It is a swing state no longer. Georgia. This is almost the exact opposite. It is now completely in play. R plus 0.21, which is going to round to flat even. So it's going to stay gray. There is a very, very, very narrow Republican advantage. So right now I will be putting it in the tilt column right there. But it is very, very narrow Republican. So that is literally going to end up being even, just because it's, I have to put it in the column. I'm going to actually put in 0.21. So, that is an obscenely close number, obviously 0.21. This is because this is one of the most left trending states in the entire country. It only voted 0.72 to the right of the country in 2024, after it voted 4.23 to the right in 2020, and was at 12.5 to the right in 2008. So it has been slowly moving towards the left, and it could vote to the left of the nation in 2028. That is absolutely a possibility. It depends, and honestly, if you look at the county map, some of these areas around the Atlanta metro region are the only areas in the country. These are like some of the only counties and regions in the country that moved towards the left, towards Kamala Harris. 6.3% towards Kamala Harris, 6.7 in Rockdale, 9 points to the left in Henry County. And Henry County isn't huge, but that's a 38,000 vote surplus right there. So that's a pretty big gain there. Some of these counties are probably going to be moving closer to as the Atlanta region continues to grow. Fayette County actually did narrow up. That was another one. I wouldn't be surprised if that would flip in 2028, for example. So all of those are general concern for the Republican Party is mainly going to be in Georgia. So that's why Jon Ossoff has a pretty good chance of maybe being able to hold on to a seat, especially since Brian Kemp isn't running. So that's a main thing that we're going to be looking at in the midterms is the fact that Georgia is continually left trending, but as of right now, it does have a narrow Republican PVI. So next we're going to be looking into Hawaii, D plus 24. Again, this is a right trending state, so this is somewhat concerning, you could say, but D plus 24 isn't anywhere close by any means, but it does also not help that, voted for Obama by a lot because he was from the state of Hawaii, and then it went down very quickly to 30, 25, 24.6. So it actually moved to the right in comparison to the nation, and if I'm correct, it is literally one of the only states to do so that isn't the huge ones, which is New Jersey, New York, Florida, Texas, California. So the nation as a whole moved to the right, as you can see, by 5.9%. So what you would do, if I remember how to do this correctly, apparently I do not. All right, so at some point I had it where shifted it to the right. There's no edit mode for some reason. All right, well, anyway, it was one of the few states, I think he actually got rid of that at some point, but it was one of the only states that actually moved to the right. So you can see right there, 5.9, it moved to the right by 6.4. See, Arizona moved to the left by 0.1%. So, Mississippi moved to the right, Tennessee, South Carolina, Illinois, Massachusetts, Rhode Island. Those are the states that moved to the right in comparison to the nation, as well as New Jersey, New York, Florida, Texas, California, and Hawaii. So, again, it actually moved to the right in comparison to the nation when basically every single other state moved to the left. So, D plus 24, but that is somewhat of concern. It's only 4 electoral votes, though, so it's not going to be a huge loss if they do end up losing it. Idaho, R plus 35.5. This is one of the highest in the entire country, and there's literally no chance that the Democrats are going to be winning this, probably in my lifetime, unless there's obviously the chance that there's going to be large political realignments, but it's still moving to the right. So that doesn't necessarily help much of anything. The demographics are definitely beneficial to the Republicans. Illinois, 0.8% to the right. It did move a bit to the right in 2024, as I did say. It moved a bit to the right from 2008 to 2012, interestingly enough, even though that was Barack Obama's home state there. But then it moved to the left in 2016, to the right in 2020, to the right in 2024. So it's been a bit over the place, relatively even for demographics. That's mostly going to be just a bit less white than the rest of the country, a bit more educated, but a bit older. So it's back and forth. D plus 12, it is almost 12.5. That's very, very close. But then it's going to be D plus 12 here, D plus 12 for Illinois, which is quite a considerable shift to the right from where it might have been not that long ago. Indiana, still a right trending state. It has been since Barack Obama won it in 2008. It voted 6.25 points to the right of the nation, and then 14-21. Its peak was actually 2016. It slowly moved a little bit to the left, but not close to as much as it did from 2008 to 2012 to 2016. That was a 7-point swing after an 8-point swing. So it still hasn't kept up yet, even though that is weighted. And the demographics are favorable towards Republicans. So that's going to be 18.5 for the Republicans there. 18.5 PVI. So that's why, they don't have much of a shot in order to be able to win much of anything. Trump won it by 19. So that's 18.96 if you want to be more specific. Iowa, right trending. That's mostly going to be from 2012, where it voted 2 points to the left of the nation to 11.5 to the right in 2016, and has slightly moved to the left of the nation since then, but not really by much. Demographics are favorable towards Republicans now, and it is going to be R plus 13 on the map. Again, that's going to be another safe state there. Trump winning it by 13.2 did the Democrats absolutely no favors. That really is going to make things quite difficult for the senatorial race coming up, R plus 13. So that is still going to be pretty difficult for them to be able to pull off, all things considered. Kansas is a left trending state, but it's still just so Republican that it really doesn't matter. So 14.5. It is under 15 points to the right of the nation for the first time on this list here. 22.2 to 25.58, but then it went down to 22.51. 1914. So it is moving towards the left. It is getting more of an educated population. Not by much, but I think this number is actually increasing. It's a very white state. White college educated populations are the most left trending groups in the entire country, and it is a bit young, which is also going to be from those college educated voters. So that's going to be R plus, that is still going to be R plus 14.5. So that does stifle any real fever dreams of a blue Kansas unless the Democrat wins the national popular vote by over 14.5 points, which would be a larger victory than Barack Obama in 2008. Kentucky, we have R plus 30. So this is one of the reddest states in the entire country, and it's actually a bit more than Alabama and Arkansas. If I'm correct, this actually is, other than Oklahoma, North Dakota, West Virginia, Wyoming. So this is the 5th reddest state in the entire nation. And so now when you're talking about states, this is one of the ones that actually you get to ridiculous numbers here, pretty much. Trump won it by 30.5. 26 in 2020. He won it by 30 in 2016, so a bit better in 2024 than in 2016. But only a little bit better, which means that it actually did shift to the left in comparison to the nation. It did shift a little bit to the left from 2020 to 2024. So, but it is still a right trending state. It's mostly going to be from 26 to 31, and it is relatively stagnant and actually did move to the right. It only voted for McCain by 16 in 2008. Louisiana, interestingly, a left trending state, but that's mostly because it's not going to be putting up against any movement necessarily. A 3-point move, 3.5-point move to the 2.5-point move to the left from 2020 to 2024. But the demographics are slightly favorable towards the Republican Party. R plus 20.5, so still it's not going to be anything close for the Democrats. There's no real shot there. There's going to be a continual safe Republican state for a long time. Maine, now we have D plus 7.5. So here's a likely state. 7.5 here is going to be the number for Democrats. Kamala Harris won it by 7. So that is 8.5 points to the left of the nation after only voting 4.5 to the left of the nation in 2020 and 0.87 to the left in 2016. After voting 11.5 points to the left in 2012 and 10 to the left in 2008. So it moved to the left and then way to the right, and now has been moving back towards the left. But it is a relatively white state, mostly from the second congressional district. But I don't have any demographics for that. I will probably be plugging those in later, but that's not going to affect anything too much. So the first district plus 23, the second district plus 8.5. So those are definitely very different in multiple different ways. Obviously, it's much more rural. This is actually the largest congressional district east of the Mississippi River by land size. So it is a very rural district. But then you have the first district, which is very urban. So that's going to be like the two stark opposites that are going to be here in the state of Maine. Maryland, D plus 31. This is actually bluer. Then Kentucky is red, which is pretty difficult to get. But you do have D plus 31 here that's continually left trending. That's actually going to be because it's continuing to urbanize, especially the areas right around the Washington, D.C. area. It's going to be Montgomery County, Prince George's County, especially going to be the bulk of these votes right here, 302,000 votes right there, surplus for Kamala Harris. Now, of course, that was actually still a bit of a loss down there. That's going to be down 40,000 votes surplus, but a bit in Charles County as well. But these are going to be the two main counties that are very, very urban. Also, Baltimore as well is continuing to grow, so that's going to be why it's been moving towards the left. That educated population is going to be moving to the left. Very, very educated state, as well as the next state of Massachusetts, 27.5. It did move to the right compared to the nation in 2024, but it is still a very strong blue state nonetheless. Kamala Harris still won it by 25. So there's no real concern for the Democrats by any means. And in 2020, Joe Biden won it by over 1 million votes. So, but here Kamala Harris only won it. She lost 125,000 votes compared for the margin there. So that is interesting of note, but it's another very educated state. It's almost perfectly in line with Maryland, as they have relatively alike characteristics as a whole, but it moved way more to the right in 2024 than Maryland did. And that's mostly because it's probably a relatively white state, if I'm correct. Yet Maryland is more racially diverse than the rest of the country, but Massachusetts is not. So I guess it's actually going to be more of a show that in some areas the white educated population actually didn't move towards the left, but it's also really going to depend on these counties where you actually had Suffolk, which is going to be mostly Maine, Boston area. These regions didn't, so it's going to be a bit of a movement away from the Democrats by some of these more educated populations, which we're not seeing elsewhere. So next, going to be the state of Michigan. This is going to be a really, obviously a very crucial swing state, and so as such, you're going to expect this going to be a bit Republican leaning. To be specific, it is R plus 0.5, but we're going to be really specific here, 0.65 for this map. So we do have R plus 0.65. So that's going to be more to the right than Georgia, which is something really interesting of note. Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. Wisconsin is not actually, just barely to the left, but Pennsylvania and Michigan are both have PVIs to the right of Georgia for the first time in a long time, as it is left trending, but all three of these states are right trending. Wisconsin's a bit left trending just because it actually voted to the left of the nation in 2024. Meanwhile, Pennsylvania voted a quarter of a point to the right, and Michigan 6/100ths of a point to the left after voting 1.68. So it's not at enough of a left trend to combat the fact that it went from 9 points to the left of the nation in 2008, 5.5 in 2012, 2.3 to the right in 2016. So those still outweigh the recent slight leftward trends in the state of Michigan. So it is going to be R plus 0.65 on the map here. Next is going to be the state of Minnesota, 5.5. This is a slightly left trending state, sort of the same thing. It's going to be in the Rust Belt Quartet. It is the only one that Kamala Harris won, and also the only one that Hillary Clinton won. But obviously, Kamala Harris won it by more than Hillary Clinton did, even though Kamala Harris did 3 points worse in the popular vote. So obviously that's going to count as a leftward trend. It actually voted half a point to the right of the country in 2016, the only time that it did so. But then it undid itself and then moved quickly to the left. So that's going to be why that's a leftward trend. The demographics are basically flat even. So this is going to end up being 5.5. That's going to be narrowly a likely state. So that's going to be 5.5 on the map here. I cannot type. All right, so that's going to be a 5.5 for the state of Minnesota. Mississippi, 22. This one's basically flat even there. It actually did move towards the right in the overall vote here. It was one. It was basically one of the only states to do so from 2016 through 2024. Another one of those was California. The only time that it actually didn't move to the right was actually from 2008 to 2012. It did move to the left. It actually only voted against Barack Obama by 11.5 in 2012. So it's actually a relatively white state, interestingly enough. It's very college uneducated. That's really what this demographic issue is going to be for the Democrats. So it is going to be a pivotal state for a long time. That is the wrong candidate. All right. Pivotal state for the Republicans for a long time. Missouri, R plus 18. It is still counted as a Republican trending state because of that trend from 2008, where voted 7.5 to 13.25 in 2012 to 20.5 in 2016. It has slowly moved a little bit to the left since then, as we end up having a bit of growth in the St. Louis area, a bit more educated. Also, like what we're getting right around here, the Kansas City region is continuing to grow and diversify. It's going to eventually be something like the outer Washington, D.C. region. What we saw happen there to Maryland, where it got more blue, and we also saw Virginia flip. I think we're generally eventually going to see the same thing happen in Kansas as well as in Missouri. Both of those are actually going to start going blue. But it will take a long time as they have a lot of ground to cover. R plus 18 in general, we do have a very white population, a bit less college educated, and a bit older. Montana, R plus 19. This one, it only voted against Barack Obama in 2008 by 2.3%. This was one of the closest that the Democrats have gotten to winning there in a while, but of course, Bill Clinton actually did win it in his first run in 1992. But then it started voting for Trump by 20 points. So, well, it did in 2016. It actually didn't in 2024. So it did move to the left of the nation a little bit. It has slowly been moving towards the left for a little while. R plus 19, though, so it's not, again, it's not even really within reach by any means. I mean, Alaska's at least left trending, like, on an actual note there, but it's really not anything that the Democrats are going to be going after anytime soon. But what is interesting is the state of Nebraska, 2.5 points to the left. However, it doesn't really matter as it is still a safe Republican state, R plus 19. So that's going to be interesting. The demographics, actually, it says for the Democrats, because it is quite a bit younger and it's a bit less white than the rest of the country, interestingly enough. But most of that's probably going to be the 2nd district, which has been moving very far to the left, and the 1st district, which is actually somewhat suburban. So, but the 3rd is the most Republican region in the entire country. So that's going to be safe red right there by every single metric, and the 1st district is just barely going to be safe with R plus 11.5 is going to be that number there. For the 1st district, but the 3rd district, on the other hand, is going to be R plus 53, the most Republican region in the entire country, and it will stay that way for a long time. But the 2nd district is actually going to be D plus 6.5, so that is going to be a likely state right there, a likely region. This was the first time that Nebraska flipped its electoral vote delegation was in 2008 when Obama won. the second district. Romney flipped it. Trump barely won it in 2016. Biden flipped it in 2020. And then Harris won it again in 2024. So it has been trending very hard to the left. It is the most left trending thing in the entire country. Again, as I said, Utah's a bit flawed with the fact that it went from Romney to having a large vote share for. Wow, I'm completely blank on his name now. For McMullen. I was thinking about 2008 for some reason. All right, so then we end up going over to New Hampshire. This is actually a left trending state, as again, it's one of those other close ones, kind of like Minnesota, except even less so, where Clinton just narrowly pulled off a win in 2016, but Kamala Harris had a much more comfortable margin in 2024. It still was relatively close, but it voted to the right of the nation in 2016. It voted by 4.25 to the left in 2024. So it is actually going to be D+4 on the map here. It's going to be lean as such. And so D+4 here, this means it's going to be a bit easier for the Democrats this time around, especially for the Senate race. That Senate race in 2016 was very, 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 very narrowly flipped by the Democrats in 2016 by 0.14 against current governor Kelly Ayotte. But she's doing fine now, obviously, as governor. She won by quite a considerable amount, but still, that is a bit of a good sign for the Democrats there. They're going to be able to hold on there. Now, on the other hand, 1.83 points to the right, and basically an even demographic number in New Jersey. It's a bit more educated, but it's actually very white. Outside of New York City, it's a very white region. It's pretty suburban, so that's going to mainly explain this trend to the left. That happened here from 2008 to 2012, but it's actually continually been moving towards the right in comparison to the nation from 2012 to 2016, and then 2016 to 2020, and then 2020 to 2024. Obviously, it moved 4 points to the right in respect to the nation, so it is going to end up being only D+7.5 on the map here. D+7.5 is going to be a concern for the Democrats. It's going to be right on line with Maine now. Kamala Harris only won it by 6 after Joe Biden won it by 16. So it's a flat 10-point drop, obviously. New Mexico is actually a slightly left trending state. That's going to be not by much, though, but it did actually slightly move to the left. It moved a little bit to the left from 2016 to 2020, interestingly enough, by 0.2%. It actually is a bit towards the Republicans because it's the lowest college educated number for any state. I don't know. Anyway, it's actually a bit whiter than the rest of the nation, interestingly enough, even though it has a high Latino population, which is part of why it's been driving to the right, but it's actually going to be D+7 at the end of the day here, D+7 in the state of New Mexico. So that is still going to be a somewhat considerable number for the Democrats for the next while. Now, New York, 2.8 to the right. So this is going to be of concern. That means that if that trend does continue, the Democrats only have 5 more cycles out of New York, and those 28 electoral votes is probably going to lose one, so that would be 27. 27 electoral votes will be on the line in the late 2030s, but as of right now, it is D+14, not necessarily considerably close by any means, but there's definitely bluer states out there. It's now less blue than Delaware, which is interesting considering that Obama won Delaware by 25, he won New York by 27, 28, 19. That's a great sign right there, right, to show Obama won Delaware by 18.5, he won New York by 28. This time around, 14.7, 12.6. Delaware was to the left of New York this cycle, so that's going to be a rough sign for the Democrats here that New York is eventually slowly moving out of reach. Of course, now with Mamdani's victory in New York City, that means that there's not necessarily going to be gone for the Democrats by any means, and there are ways for them to potentially get that electorate back. The question is, are they actually going to go through with it? North Carolina is a left trending state. As of right now, it appears that it actually will be a Democrat leaning PVI next cycle. But it only voted 1.75 points to the right of the nation in 2024. R plus 2, since it's actually rounding up to 2, I'm going to have it as the under 2 number here. And also, since it is under 2, I am going to actually include the 10th digit, so 1.8 for North Carolina, just to show that it is, in fact, under 2. So that is going to be the number for North Carolina. 1.8 is continually trending to the left. It actually again voted to the right of the nation. It was impressive when Barack Obama won it in 2008, but that was just because he did so well in nationally. He actually did better compared to the national popular vote in North Carolina in 2012 than in 2008. And then 5.75 to 5.8, that's relatively stagnant, and actually was relatively stagnant from 2012 to 2020. It only moved a tenth of a point to the left, but then 1.73 to the right of the nation in 2024. That's a huge shift right there. North Carolina was one of a few areas where you actually did see some leftward movements over here, and actually in right outside Wake County, that's a somewhat suburban county there. So that is, and some suburbs around, that's not Charlotte, I don't think. That might be Charlotte. So that's going to be considerable for the Democrats in the future. North Dakota. Now, this is a rough state for the Democrats, to say the least. It was within 10 in 2008, which is insane. McCain only won it by 8.5. But then, just like that, Romney won it by 20. Trump won it by 37 or 36. So it very, very quickly flew right out of the reach of the Democrats. It is now R plus 36.5. I mean, not even all that long ago, Democrats had both senators in North Dakota. And now it is one of the most Republican states in the entire country. I believe it's third. Ohio, this was another one that's really rough for the Democrats. It voted for double digits for Trump. This was the first time that it went for any candidate by double digits since all the way going back to, again, 1988. So that would be 10.9. Trump did better than in 1988. So that's the difference here. That's the best performance in Ohio since 1984. So it has breached the 10%, the 10-point margin for the PVI here, 9/10 of a point trend here, even though it did move a bit to the left. It continually moved to the right. Here it moved a bit to the left in comparison to the nation, but then it went all the way to 10 points to the right of the nation, 12.5 in 2020, and then just under 10 in 2024. So it is basically 10.5 on the nose. 10.5 is going to be the final margin right there. That's going to be the least here. It is now, we're almost at the point where Ohio and Alaska are equally Republican while they're heading in opposite directions. Oklahoma is the second most Republican state in the entire country, R plus 33. There's not really much to say about this. I mean, even in 2008, McCain won it by 31. So it has been continually Republican for a very long time. Demographics are strong for Republicans as it's relatively uneducated. It's very white. It's a bit younger, but that's mostly probably due to low life expectancy. But there's not really much to say about that. The state of Oregon actually moving quite a bit strong to the left. Interestingly, the trend for Oklahoma is actually a bit towards the left, but that's just because it keeps bouncing back and forth. And here it went only to 34 when Trump won it by 36 in 2016. And so that actually does mean that it moved down to 32.75 to the right of the nation. It doesn't really mean that much. Oregon's actually been a left trending state. It voted 9 and then 8.25, 8.9, 11.5, 15.78. So it's actually a left trending state here, interestingly enough. D plus 16, a strong Democratic state along the Pacific Blue Wall here. So that's been one that they've been able to hold on to for a long time, again, all the way back since 1992 when Clinton flipped California. And interestingly enough, the two states that Dukakis won against Bush voted less for Clinton than the state that Clinton flipped. So that's kind of funny. But the Pacific Blue Wall also includes Hawaii, and all four of those states have consistently voted blue, not by much. Gore only won Oregon by 0.44, Washington by 5.6. In 2004, Kerry only won Oregon by 4.2, and California by 9.9. But only Hawaii by 8.7. But then once we got to the Obama years, we have a very strong and secure blue wall. They all voted by double digits or more since then, and even then, they're almost all at parity now. Interestingly enough, Washington just barely voted to the right of where it did in 2020. I remember right after the election, there was a chance that it actually hadn't moved to the right. But then the final votes did come in and actually just barely did. But anyway, next up is Pennsylvania. Slightly left trending, but only because that's funny. The weighted result is literally 1/100% for the Democrats. That's only because of this 3.25 to 1/4 of a point to the right of the nation shift right there. But it only voted 1/4 of a point to the right of the nation this time around in 2024. And it used to vote to the left of the nation, though, 3 points to the left in 2008, 1.5 in 2012, and then it voted 2.8 to the right in 2016, 3.25 in 2020, and 1/4 in 2024. So now it is a Republican-leaning state, not by much, though. And of course, it's a bit of a difference for the gubernatorial race because you have John Shapiro, for example. That's also going to be a difference in Wisconsin when we get down to it there. So R plus 0.5, that's going to be a very close state there for the Democrats. 0.71, that is actually pretty close to rounding up to 1. I'm pretty sure the Cook PVI is R plus 1 for the state of Pennsylvania. They do it by units of 1. Rhode Island. So here we do actually have a right trending state, interestingly enough. It used to go by over 20 to the left of the nation, but now in the Trump years, it's gone by 13.5 or less. So 14.74, it's still 14.5 to the left of the nation. So it's really not, it's not necessarily in Republicans' grasp necessarily. It's just not that strong of a Democratic state anymore. Next up is going to be South Carolina, 17. Just barely rounding up. It's actually a right trending state. Interestingly enough, it moved to the right in comparison to the nation. That's, again, one of the few states to do so. It moved a little bit to the left, but then it really undid it in 2024. And that was after it voted 14.33 to the right of the nation. It's actually a very, very white state, interestingly enough. 31% more white than the rest of the nation. So, interestingly, South Dakota is actually less white than South Carolina. There's actually a chance that those might be flipped. I'm not 100% sure. I'll have to check on that. So that's fun. But that's not going to weigh it that much. Still probably going to be R plus 17. That's going to be that was the strongest state for the Republicans on the eastern seaboard, and if things continue, it still will, unless Florida continues to move to the right, at which point it will actually take that crown. So it's R plus 17 here on the map. Now we're starting to get to where we're rounding things out. South Dakota, 28.5. This is another state that Barack Obama only lost by under 10 points in 2008. But then it shifted very, very hard to the right for Donald Trump. Tennessee, another 28.5. It's actually basically the exact same thing. Again, it was a state that actually moved towards the right in comparison to the nation from 2020 to 2024. It actually moved a bit to the left from 2016 to 2020. So it kind of did that backwards, but it only voted for McCain by 15 in 2008, it has been moving hard to the right, 1 point to the right. There, the demographics are favorable for the Republicans. Texas, slightly left trending state, even though it did actually move 2.2 points to the right of the nation in 2024. But it used to vote 19 points to the right of the nation, now 12.2. So it is still slightly left trending. R plus 12 is going to be the end result there, meaning that we do, of course, have a majority for the Republicans. So that means that if the Republicans win the national popular vote, or if they don't lose it by more than 0.21, then they will win the presidential election in 2028. So then we have Utah, R plus 19. This is another drop. Again, that's going to be because of a loss of support. It seems to be a slightly anti-MAGA state. That's mainly going to be what the issue is here, but also, again, because of Romney. And so that trend is going to be a bit overweighted a little bit. But it voted 20.1 points to the right of the nation. That's still not going to be that huge of a trend to the left. Vermont, D plus 33. This is the bluest state in the entire country, D plus 33. It gave Clinton her largest margin of victory in 2016. Actually, no, it didn't. Interesting. Okay. It gave Biden his largest margin of victory in 2020 and Harris hers in 2024. So, it's a slightly blue trending state. It moved towards the left basically each and every cycle since 2012. And so, and it's also the state that has Bernie Sanders as its senator. So it's a very strong left state. It's not moving anytime soon. Another left trending state is going to be the state of Virginia, D plus 8. So this one's going to be another strong state for the Democratic Party. Not necessarily anything of concern. Harris won it by 6. Clinton won it by 5. So that's going to be a 5-point shift compared to the nation. Actually voted to the right of the nation in 2008 by 1 point. Narrowly to the left of the nation in 2012, basically right on par. 3.25 to the left in 2016. 5.5 in 2020, 7.25 in 2024. So it is a continually left trending state. Demographics are now in favor of Democrats because it's quite a bit more college educated. Washington, D plus 20. This is another left trending state. It's literally just another part of the Pacific Blue Wall that we talked about before. West Virginia, R plus 42. This is a huge red state now. It used to be a Democratic stronghold, but that was before all those especially the coal mining communities and stuff completely left the Democratic Party. This was even the map in 2008, and Barack Obama only lost the state by 13 to McCain. But then 2012 county shutout. And then Trump won the state by 42 in 2016, 39 in 2020, 42 in 2024. So it's basically just completely a goner for the Democrats at this point. It has been for a few decades. Wisconsin is flat even, but it is a bit Republican leaning. So that is going to be R plus 0.19 on the map here. So R plus 0.19. Very, very, very close. Slightly left trending. That's because it actually voted to the left of the nation in 2024. Voted to the left of the nation in 2008 and 2012. To the right in 2016. And then more so in 2020. And then to the left of the nation again in 2024. The only swing state to do so. Oh, wait, no. Michigan narrowly did. And then we get down to Wyoming, 45.5 for the Republicans. This is the most Republican state in the entire country, and that is it. And somehow we skipped Nevada. So sorry to everyone who lives in Nevada, if anyone is in my audience who does. 1.62 to the right of the nation as a whole, but actually voted to the right of the nation for the first time in a while in 2020, and it actually still did in 2024, just not by as much. And that was after it was from 5 points. It's been continually right trending. It's not very educated. It's somewhat white. It's been continually moving towards the right. That's been relatively apparent for a long time. But now it's all the way up to R+2 for the final PVI here for the state of Nevada. And it actually is above 2%. So that is going to be 2.2 for rounding. So there we go. That is, in fact, going to be it for the... and if it actually is over, then I'll do that. And then to finish it off completely, Washington, D.C. is D plus 86. That is not a typo. That is not anything incorrect whatsoever. It is D plus 86. And that is because Kamala Harris won it by 83. Biden won it by 87. Clinton won it by 87. Obama won it by 84. 86. Kerry by 80. All the way back, 1984, Ronald Reagan won the popular vote by 18.2%. Mondale got 13 electoral votes. He won his home state of Minnesota by 0.18% and D.C. by 71%. Washington, D.C. has never voted for a Republican. It got its ability to vote in the presidential elections in 1964, and it has voted blue every single time by at least, I think, 1968, maybe 1972. 1972 was the closest it has ever been, and that even was 56.5-point margin. So it is the bluest region in the entire country, D plus 86, and it's basically maxed out. I mean, I don't even know. In theory, is left trending, but that's only because the nation as a whole trended to the right. And so finally we have a tipping point of minus 0.7135. So what exactly is that? That literally just means that the tipping point of 0.7 right there. That would be enough to flip the state of Pennsylvania. And that would also flip these two. You would end up having Georgia, but Georgia itself isn't enough. So if you were to tip it by the tipping point, so here is the, real quick, I'm going to save this, but the tipping point literally just means that it will end up being that's the point at which the entire election hinges on. So that would be shifting the popular vote by however much. So, all right, there we go. So now what I can do is just duplicate and then pull it up. There we go. And so then all we have to do is just shift it by the tipping point, and you end up with Pennsylvania being split even, 267 to 252. And based on that, you have, this would be on, so that means that the Democrats would have to win the popular vote by over 0.7135% in order to win a presidential election, assuming these numbers were all correct. So that was a lot. I went over a lot. I've been recording for over an hour, so I am going to end it there. There's not really even much more else to say. I am actually done. So thank you all so much for watching today's video. This was, again, a long one, even though I wasn't necessarily expecting it to be as long as it ended up being. Let me know if you have any insight or ideas onto this, what helpful information there could be. I have lots of background information here. I'm probably going to move the weights and stuff over here again, so I can get it off this sheet so I could sort it if I want to. But that's going to be it for now. I did make the 2-year gubernatorial sheet, so that's going to be helpful. So thank you all so much for watching today's video, and have a fantastic rest of your day.